Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am Tushar Agrawal. I am a practicing advocate in Delhi High Court and Supreme Court of India. And one of my major practice areas are criminal law. So I have tried to cover one of the topics, which being a criminal law practitioner in India, we are facing. So I have a presentation here. So the topic is bail jurisprudence, economic offenses, and right to life and personal liberty. So my presentation would be covering three different topics and how in the economic offenses, the general bail jurisprudence and the rights of the accused regarding their right to life and private personal liberty is getting affected. I would like to highlight some points regarding that. So my seniors, friends, and colleagues from India would definitely connect with this presentation. But yes, I will try to make it easy for the bodies and participants from different jurisdictions other than India. So can I have a next slide, please? Okay. So yes, in a Constitution of India, we have a very important fundamental right given to the citizens of India. It's about Article 21 of Constitution of India, which says right to life and personal liberty. It says no person shall be deprived of his right to life or personal liberty, except according to the procedure established by law. So, this is the article which has been most widely interpreted by the Apex Court of India. Almost every right which is necessary for the dignity of a human being is covered under this article, like right to peace, right to healthy environment, and right to remain silent, right to privacy. So this is one of the article where every citizen of India can exercise its right, and it right will be protected by the Supreme Court of India if it is violated by any law. So now I narrow down my topic why I'm mentioning this right to life and personal liberty. In criminal law, if an accused is arrested by an investigating agency during the course of an investigation, so whether that person should be granted bail or not. So while granting the bail, the courts have to consider his right to life and personal liberty as well. So there are some bail jurisprudence and some principles regarding which are in operation in India as well as other jurisdictions also. Particularly in India, if we come up for the bail jurisprudence, we have two, three major principles. So first of all, while Supreme Court is interpreting and what is the intention of the legislature also behind enacting criminal code of procedure, that while granting the bail, one should think and one should consider in mind that the golden rule of criminal law is that bail is a rule and jail is an exception. So what while granting the bail, the judge has to consider that if a person can remain out and he will not affect the witnesses and the evidences which are going to be tried which are going to be presented before the court of law. So that court has to follow that bail should be granted, and he or she, the accused person, should not be put behind the bars indefinitely during the trial period. And if we come again, then pre-trial incarceration. In most of the cases, what happens during investigation? Person is got arrested, person files for the bail. So in first of the circumstances, the bail got rejected because the investigation is still in process, and the investigation agency says before the court of law that they have an apprehension that the accused person may influence the witnesses or may tamper with the evidences. So the bail gets rejected most of the times. But sometimes there are cases where the charge sheet has been filed. The entire investigation material is before the court of law. Then also in some of the cases, bail gets rejected. So there is a question now for what reasons the investigating agency wants the accused person to be behind the bars. Is it up? So is pre-trial incarceration is necessary or is violative of Article 21? There are many Supreme Court cases where it is being held that pre-trial incarceration is violative of Article 21, which I just mentioned, its right to life and personal liberty. And one and the foremost, I would say in criminal law, the principle is that till the trial is concluded, an accused and innocent person, and he should not be presumed guilty. So when the trial is going on, the court should function on the presumption that the accused is not guilty. Otherwise, there will be an biasness towards the accused in the court of law, that this person has committed something wrong and this person should be, accused person should be punished. So these are three major criminal law principles, which is the general bail jurisprudence is in function in India. And Supreme Court, in a very famous case of P. Chidambaram versus Enforcement Directorate, has come up with these three conditions which the court has to consider further. That if you are granting the bail, the judge has to ensure that if I release the person on the bail, so there should not be any flight risk. There should not be any possibility that this person can leave the country and do not come before the court of law during the trial. So for in that conditions, the court sometimes puts the condition that the passport will be surrendered to the court. And every time if you want to travel for a genuine reasons, so you can take a permission from the court, give all your itineraries and all your schedule why you are traveling and where you are traveling, and then you can be given the permission. So if this condition can be satisfied that there is no flight risk, then you can be the court can consider to grant you the bail. The second condition is if I say he will not influence the witnesses, because the witnesses are most important persons during the trial, where the prosecution agency as well as the defense side presents their witnesses, examine them, cross-examine them, and whatever statement they have given to the court, which is only has to be considered by the court of law before giving the final verdict. So the witnesses should not get influenced. An effective witness protection program is yet to come in India, but it is in the process. There are provisions. You can complain to the police that you are getting threats or something, but yes, effective one is yet to be implemented soon. And the third condition is if you not tamper with the evidence. Important documents, if you have any influence with the investigation agency, you can tamper some document, you can forge some document. But if the court can foresee that there is no possibility, all the documents is in the custody of the court and accused cannot tamper with the evidence. So while considering these three conditions, bail can be granted to the accused persons. So this is one of the case, Sanjay Chandra versus CBI. It is reported in Supreme Court cases, which is a law general where the cases are being reported. So the Supreme Court of India has, it is a landmark case in bail jurisprudence, where the Supreme Court of India has said, bail is the rule and committal to jail is an exception. Refusal of bail is a restriction on the personal liberty of the individual guaranteed under Article 21 of the Constitution of India. So this right to life and personal liberty to an accused who has to be granted bail by the court. So this is the foremost right which is considered for every citizen, be a prospective accused or be a normal citizen who has not committed any offense. So now I narrow down if an accused has committed any economic offense. So before I come why in economic offense, bail parameters should be the same, which I just mentioned, and or in bail economic offenses, there should be some stricter provisions or different threshold altogether where the accused having committed economic offense should not be granted bail. So before I come to that, it's just a normal introduction to economic offenses. So it is related to forgery or counterfeiting of money and cheating where you forge any document. And during pandemic, with the more utilization of the technology, it also involves cybercrime or the financial frauds done through the net banking. So all these are certain economic offenses. Certain laws, local laws of India, which are dealing with economic offenses are Prevention of Money Laundering Act and Prevention of Corruption Act, where the public servant involved in the economic offenses are being tried under this act. There's a Companies Act. The Special Agency Special Fraud Investigation Office is being formalized by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, who does investigation into the internal functioning of a company. And if they found any fraud, that has to be reported, and that the accused persons have to be tried under those provisions. And we have another act, the Goods and Services Tax Act. This is the GST, which has come up in India after removing the excise and other taxes. It's a consolidated tax. So if there is a GST tax evasion, So that's also comes under economic offenses. So yes. So as far as in my previous slides, I mentioned that there are three things: flight risk, tampering of evidence, and influencing of witnesses. These are the three general conditions when the person has to be granted bail in offenses other than the economic offenses. But in economic offenses, the legislation or the legislature of the country has come up with these two additional twin conditions, because according to them, economic offenses form a certain different class which has to be dealt with more seriously. So these are the some twin conditions which are incorporated in Companies Act, Prevention of Money Laundering Act, Narcotics and Psychotropic Substances Act, even the GST Act. So these are some conditions. So in normal offenses, Indian Penal Code offenses, a court, if satisfied that these three conditions are not going to be violated, court can grant the bail even without listening to a public prosecutor. But in economic offenses, without giving an opportunity to public prosecutor, a court cannot grant the bail. So this is the one additional conditions apart from those three conditions. And the second condition, which I consider more stringent, because this condition almost at the stage of bail, where sometimes the charge sheet is also not filed and the evidence, entire evidence is also not before the court. But what the threshold is being set such high. So if I read it for the audience here, where the public prosecutor opposes the bail application and the court is satisfied that there are reasonable grounds for believing that he is not guilty of the such offense and that he is not likely to commit any offense while on bail. So if you can notice the word guilty, so usually when the entire examination, cross-examination and all the evidence are presented before the court, after that it is the duty of the court to find that whether person is a guilty or not. But this condition asks the court to decide at a very initial stage of a trial, during the stage of a bail itself, that the court has to have a reasonable grounds that for believing that the person is not guilty of committing an offense. So it's a kind of a mini trial at the stage of bail. So these are the two stringent conditions. And initially when these two stringent conditions were incorporated, so one of the observations were also made by Honorable Supreme Court of India in a very famous case, Y.S. Jagan Mohan Reddy versus CBI, that economic offenses constitute a class apart and need to be visited with a different approach in the matter of bail. The economic offense, having deep-rooted conspiracies and involving huge loss of public funds, needs to be viewed seriously and considered as grave offenses affecting the economy of the country as a whole, and thereby posing serious threat to the financial health of the country. So with this observation of the Supreme Court of India, what's happened that many lower courts, the high courts across the country and the district courts which are functioning across the different cities in the India, they started rejecting the bail considering this observation by the Honorable Supreme Court of India, that bail should be rejected because this person have committed the economic offense. But considering Article 21, right to life and personal liberty, and even considering these twin conditions which I mentioned in my previous slide, just because an accused has committed an economic offense, is it sufficient to snatch his right to life and personal liberty? That question comes into my mind when I deal with from the side of an accused person and present its case before the court of law. That this person has committed the economic offense, it's a grave offense, and the bail should be rejected. So that is one thing which I wanted to highlight here. I'm so sorry. So why I'm saying this is some data also which I wanted to present before this audience, that in India, according to the 2019 National Crime Records Bureau data, 7 in 10 of the lakhs of people, which is figure mentioned, which are in Indian jails, they are under trial prisoners. It means the trial is still in progress and those people are incarcerated in the jail and the case is yet to be decided, since in the previous session it was mentioned that millions of cases are pending, and because of this pandemic also the pendency of cases has got a major hit. There are a lot of more cases which are being pending. The country is trying to resolve that problem also. So the 7 in 10 of these lakhs of under trial prisoners, and according to the World Prison Brief, 69% of the Indian prisoners are under trial prisoners. And with utmost responsibility, I would like to say out of these 69%, more than 50% are the accused persons who are economic offenders. So considering this situation where the under trial prisoners are 7 out of 10, and more than 50% are economic offenders, and during a pandemic, a special guideline also came from the Supreme Court of India, where the Supreme Court of India asked the states, we have 29 states, so asked the states to form a high-powered committee and consider if some prisoners can be given interim bail for during pandemic to decongest the jails, because we have more persons who are incarcerated in the jail and we have less space according to those things. So in that guidelines also, the general guideline came that a person who has committed an offense punishable up to 10 years of imprisonment, they can be given interim bail for 45 days. And though that interim bail also got extended for few more 45 days period, but the exception to was that the under trial prisoners facing trial under Prevention of Corruption Act, Prevention of Money Laundering Act, and in cases being investigated by CBI, Enforcement Directorate, Special Fraud Investigation Office, Special Cell Delhi, Crime Branch, should not be considered for grant of interim bail. So even during the pandemic period, this direction special guideline came for the economic offenders, that since economic offenses are grave offenses, the bail should not be considered for the interim bail purpose also. So after seeing this, I have a major practice here in criminal law, I discussed with the seniors as well that should we come up with something before the court of law and try to explain that because in majorly economic offenses, the entire evidence is documentary in nature. Once the offense is being committed, the document trail or money trail has been traced. So the entire document has been put before the court of law. Now there is nothing in the custody of the accused person for which you need to interrogate him or you need to cull out some more fact from him. So because the ultimate purpose of the bail is that you ensure the presence of that accused person before the court of law during the entire trial. And if this can be ensured with the court's authority, there is no use putting the person behind the bar for whatever offenses he has committed. So yes, but positively the developments start coming from the Apex Court itself, because Supreme Court of India, if it's coming up with the YS Jagan Mohan Reddy case where it has mentioned that economic offenses form a class apart and have to be dealt seriously. But this thought, this peace of mind which I just shared with the audience, that should the right to life and personal liberty of the economic offenders be protected or be violated just because they have committed the offense, the Supreme Court gave a thought, and for the first time in 2018, in the case of Nikesh Tarachand Shah versus Union of India, this case was regarding the Prevention of Money Laundering Act. So under Section 45 of Prevention of Money Laundering Act, those twin conditions which I mentioned were there. And Supreme Court of India struck down those twin conditions, saying that these two conditions are completely unconstitutional. So for particular offenses, if you are giving two more conditions than the general bail granting conditions, so these are violative of Article 21 as well as Article 14, which says about right to equality. This is another which I just mentioned before also, P. Chidambaram versus Directorate of Enforcement. The categorical observation by Supreme Court of India was, even if the allegation is one of grave economic offense, it is not a rule that bail should be denied in every case, since as there is no such bar created in the relevant enactment passed by the legislature, nor does the bail jurisprudence contemplate such a position. Because the section regarding granting of bail, which empowers the Sessions Court, High Court, and Supreme Court to give the bail. The section in Code of Criminal Procedure does not itself differentiate that bail to the economic offenders should be denied and bail to the offenders of other offenses should be granted. So this is not in the scheme of the legislature, but during the seeing the graveness of economic offenses and during the since seeing the increase in the registration of economic offenses, this thing developed through the courts itself. But with this observations by the Supreme Court, now the things have started changing, and I also feel with this case, I would like to conclude my point of view that if you what is the need is that there has to be a balance. If you see that during the charge sheet, during the investigation, there is a threat or apprehension that witness might get influenced or evidence can be tempered, so you can reject the bail. But what is the reason if the charge sheet has been filed and still bail has been denied? So what necessary for the court of law? Because when a person comes before a court of law, it comes with an expectation which is being considered that it's a temple of justice. And in usual terms, we see if there's a fight or something between two people, we say we see you in the court. So with lot of respect before the court we come. But just because a person has committed economic offense and his bail gets rejected, so we need to see personally that the court has a responsibility that it sees the entire history of the case, that if entire documentary evidence is before the court, so that person can be considered for granting bail. And that's why this observation came in the latest case in 2021 by the Supreme Court itself in a Union of India KA versus KA Najib case, that an attempt has to be made to strike a balance between the state's right to lead evidence of its choice and establish the charges beyond any doubt, and simultaneously the accused person's right guaranteed under Part 3 of our Constitution. Part 3 is the fundamental rights part in the Constitution. So Article 21 is enshrined under that. So ultimate need across in criminal law is to strike a balance between the fundamental right as well as the state's right to try that person who has committed this offense. So with this, when I started dealing with this situation with my clients where the bails were getting rejected, so this was the quote by Martin Luther King Jr., which I used to tell the clients that initially you might face that there is injustice being happening. But yes, being your lawyer, as we have already mentioned, Mr. Rao here, that you need to drive your clients. So we used to say that if injustice is happening, it is a threat to justice. But since you have approached us, so we will try that this injustice should not happen. And as a lawyer fraternity, we are the law officers of the court. We assist the court in reaching to a right conclusion. So it is our duty that being a law officer, we give a impartial picture which is in the benefit of the law of the country. Because a culture is developed, legal culture is developed by the law officers of the country. Sometimes with our research, we come up with such a intellectual or research before the court of law that the Supreme Court appreciates. Sometimes judges records that appreciation in their judgments also. So being the law officers, and since we are all from legal fraternity, it is our duty that we assess the court so that a good and healthy law develops in the country, which becomes the law of the land and which protects the entire constitution of that particular country. So thank you so much. If time permits, I can take 2-3 questions. Okay, not a problem. So thank you so much for giving me time and for hearing me out. Thank you.